I want to start off by saying I am absolutely humbled by the response I've received from the art examination videos. I've listened to a lot of you, and understandably these videos could be written a little more professionally. However, this week I want to take a break from that and jump into something that I believe is a little more important and might hit close to home for a few of you. The content of this video is not art or comedy or anything like that. I'm sitting here reading this because I just finished a game that had me asking questions. Not questions pertinent to the game itself, but questions on what this game is really trying to say to people. Hellblade puts the player in the shoes of Senua and her journey through a hellish nightmare writhing with death and decay. It uses harrowing imagery and uncomfortable situations to inflict a feeling of insignificance onto the player. It begins as a sort of thriller, giving the player a helplessly lost in a forest kind of setup, but eventually tapers off into things like puzzles, combat, and some wicked nods to Nordic mythology. Pretty graphic nods, in fact. There are depictions of old execution rituals buried deep in northern Germanic culture. You're even lucky enough to see the aftermath of one of these executions front and center. Now, this game has been out for a hot minute, but I'm not looking to review how the game works or give it some sort of arbitrary number score or anything like that. My motive here for making this video is the same motive the developers had when putting this game on the shelf, which is awareness. Senua suffers from an incredibly debilitating mental illness that not just only hinders your progress in some situations, but making sure it consumes literally everything you're doing. Voices feed Senua disparaging comments and sarcastic advice. Images constantly never fit in with the rest of the universe. Hellblade to me has a very clear focus: the complexities and stigmas of mental illness and the attention it's beginning to demand. Now, before I dig any further into this video, I want to go ahead and preface this with the fact that a lot of the footage I'm showcasing does contain pretty huge spoilers, so I encourage you to play through the game in its entirety before watching. So, first things first, Senua suffers from a horribly incapacitating condition known as psychosis. Basically, the science behind it is that psychosis results in the scarcity of the neurotransmitter glutamate. This dysfunction leads to various forms of sensory deprivation that can lead to hallucinations, dissociation, and in severe cases, a loss of contact with reality. Now, the reason I'm being so specific with this is that this game tells you straight from the title screen that anyone routinely experiencing these symptoms will find great difficulty in playing this game due to its triggering subject matter. Now, like I said before, at the risk of minor spoilers, I'm going to describe a sequence that happens at the beginning of the game. Your objective is to open the gates of a place called Helheim, the land of the dead in Norse mythology, and you are intercepted by these strange beasts. They attack you, seemingly coming out of nowhere with no real alliance or motive. And then you are told the gate to Helheim has been locked, and will remain that way until you face two Norse gods. Wait, what? I'm just trying to infiltrate a city and save someone, and now I'm off killing gods? Your environment can also abruptly change. It can go from castle to abandoned swamp to pitch black forest to river of blood, all in like 20 minutes. And that isn't even half of it. There are times where the audio and music altogether will sharply spike or cut off for seemingly no reason. It's a part of what makes Hellblade so frustrating. Most of the time, you're left with no guidance, no handbook on what's happening, literally nothing. The voices in Senua's head will even deliberately try to confuse the player and direct them into making wrong moves.
Stop! He's getting stronger! We must stop him! You must stop him!
The way Hellblade handles itself is really randomized. Almost as though you're trapped in some sort of lucid dream. The cutscenes have really sloppy continuity. And what I mean by that is you could be in a situation that requires an urgent means of action, like, I don't know, your skin being set on fire. You watch yourself die, a short cutscene intervenes, and now you're just completely fine. Oh, and boss battle. Just out of fucking nowhere. That's really disorienting. Don't you feel like that sequence is missing something? Like there's a gap in there somewhere that should have been filled in? Well, this is all completely intentional. The aim of Hellblade is to put you in the shoes of someone with this affliction. Additionally, the game will throw quests and puzzles at you that seem almost pointless. You don't really feel like you're accomplishing much, you're just running around doing busy work. Ninja Theory has uploaded developer commentaries on their own channel, and one of the featured psychological consultants from the University of Cambridge talks about why this is. One of the defining characteristics of psychosis is making patterns out of shapes and feeling as though every ordinary task can turn into a puzzle, which makes a lot of sense considering the puzzles involve finding shapes within Senua's environment to unlock gates and doors. During Valravan's puzzle sequence, you need to find 3 raven-like figures and connect them in a way that resembles his mark. And you can also find faces of Senua's mother carved into the layout of the environment by connecting shapes and lines. And the in-game cinematics definitely like messing with your head too. Senua will turn to face the player themselves, almost as though you are the person responsible for the voices. At times, she'll maintain a pretty unnerving eye contact with the player for more than a few seconds, occasionally yelling into the screen, staring right at you. The cutscenes make the player an active participant in her illness, allowing you to really experience that harsh dissonance between Senua and her demons. The auditory hallucinations are helpful sometimes. You won't be alerted a lot of times when enemies spawn behind you, making the player reliant on the voices speaking to Senua, which I guess is sort of an auditory manifestation of Senua's fighter instinct. If danger is close, the audio of the voices will abruptly spike in volume so as to really warn the player, hey, you should turn around, there's something behind you that's about to run you through. Thing is, the voices aren't correct all the time. The voices will warn you, and sometimes you'll turn around and there won't even be anything. It makes for one hell of a ride. It offers a brilliant commentary on the relationship between a person and their illness, and that sometimes your greatest obstacle can also be an extremely helpful ally. Which does segue me into what I wanted to talk about next. There is also a huge reason this game demands that you play it with headphones. There are many instances where the Furies constantly tug and pull at the player's instinct, forcing you to question whether or not you're actually in danger. These voices were recorded using binaural microphones, a special type of microphone used to give audio a really three-dimensional presence. And the sound will seem as though it's coming from behind you or passing by you or something like that. That's the reason why, based on where you turn your camera in the game, the Furies can jump from silent to prohibitive almost immediately. But if you aren't being fully immersed in the game's soundscape, a lot of these voices will be lost coming from your TV speakers. You won't really experience the binaural audio in its full capacity, and so the effect loses a large part of its stopping power, especially in critical moments where Senua succumbs to her illness and is forced downward to the ground in pain as though she's been stabbed. Even without bloodshed or guts or viscera or anything, these meltdowns have really convincing voice acting that still make these scenes incredibly graphic. Now, this effect is largely due to this phenomenon right here, the McGurk effect. Now, I'm pretty sure a good bit of people remember that video that circulated on social media of a guy saying the words bar and far right next to each other, and what you heard was determinant on which portion of the screen you were looking at. This perceptual phenomenon is what gives Hellblade's audio design its edge. A lot of Hellblade's audio mechanics are rooted in the fact that sound and vision are perceptually linked, which is why that one part in the game where Senua loses her vision works so well, because you can still use this three-dimensional audio to hear everything going on around you. Do you remember the psychological elements that made PT so memorably scary? Scary to the point where your butthole slams shut by merely looking at gameplay? All I had to do was probably show you this footage, and now there's just shit in your pants. Well, Hellblade is full of stuff like that. I think it's the same creative process. That same sort of dissonance that leads you into continually looping through the hallways, looking for the discrepancies in each stage. Almost as though you're losing contact with reality or something. Yeah, sounds familiar, right? Even the game's permadeath feature started generating a little bit of doubt immediately after the game came out. Now there are people that have tested the limits of the game, just dying as many times as they could, and their save file was unharmed. Adversely, if people went through the game without dying once, near the end of the game the rot would still manage to crawl its way up to Senua's head. So this has been dismissed as nothing more than another scare tactic, similar in comparison to how Eternal Darkness threatened to delete all your save data. Now this isn't the first time we've seen this sort of psychological horror, and I honestly think that label fits this game perfectly. This is a legitimate psychological horror game, not what people call psychological, as in you just turn around and expect something to be there when it really isn't, but literally a horror game inundated with psychological elements. A game where psychology is its ace in the hole. Having been diagnosed with an attention disorder myself, I don't think I'm in the clear to say I can fully understand Senua's demons, but I can resonate with the objective of the game, and I think it's really respectable. Additionally, I've added links below if you want to check out the dev commentaries, and also a few helpful resources if you happen to be struggling with a similar affliction. Please consider sharing this video with someone you think may be interested. Please ring the bell so you never miss a video, and I really hope you enjoyed everything. Thanks for tuning into The Forge. It's been real, guys. See you next time.